coming home. Time's gone by.
Welcome to the Stray Red Card. And today, Brett and I are going to be talking about that whole Michael Bradley coming back to MLS. But first, actually, Brett, I just finished watching American football in Seattle. Seattle just seems to, have the best fans in the world, I guess, because, those Sounders games are packed. The Seahawks games, they're breaking world's record for being like the loudest stadium. You would think a city full of hipsters wouldn't be so damn loud, I don't know. Or I didn't know hipsters could be that loud, but I guess they can be. They were more shy in my days, I think.
Yeah, you threw me for a loop earlier today when you said, maybe we could push back the time of the vidcast. I want to watch the Seattle versus SF game. And I was thinking, is Seattle in the Champions League? Or are they playing some team? I went to MLS soccer.com. I was like, you must be talking about American football.
Yeah, I was, and when I was 5, it was the first time we moved to the United States, and we would go up and watch the Seahawks and the Sounders play. And I was actually, when I say Tacoma, I meant Lacey, Washington. So that was kind of the Seahawks were my first football team, and the Sounders were my first soccer team that I fell in love with. And
you threw them by the wayside for New York.
Eventually, my dad taught at West Point, New York, and so all of a sudden the Cosmos were hot, right? You get Pele.
How come you didn't start following the Jets with the Giants?
Well, we watched the Jets, but they had Richard Todd and a bunch of other pathetic losers on that team at the time, and they sucked, And the Giants, we never really considered the Giants. But the other thing about tonight that really, I didn't mind watching the football game that much, but I swear to God, Brett, if I have to listen to that commercial again, and everyone has heard this 1,000 times who owns a TV at this point, this song, I'm a man, and you can tell everybody. Have you heard this one yet, Brett? Have you heard that song?
Because I don't have cable.
God bless America. It's a
it's
a rip-off of the Elton John song, but then instead of being deep in a thoughtful song, like Elton John's song, well, this song is you can tell everybody that I'm the man. What a brag. Is this what music has come to this point, Brett, where the songs are just basically about bragging about yourself? Okay, we better...
5 minutes in, we better jump into this before we get people complaining about it.
All
Your
right.
first entire episode was not about soccer at all.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's get to Bradley then, because that was the whole bitch and moan for a good while now, right? Michael...
Still going on?
Michael, yeah. Well, I think for good reason, because, okay, here's the main concern that a lot of people have. Michael Bradley, probably the best, midfielder that we've had for a very long time, most competent, and certainly playing on the best team, but the best team that an American is playing for, and that's Roma, and he's getting somewhat regular play time, and he decides, because TFC, Toronto, throws all this money at him, $6 million, what is it, $6.5 million? And, it's hard to say no to that, right? But in the same way, you think, well, he's still somewhat young. He could have played in Germany again. He could have played for a lesser Italian team. He could have kept himself out there, kept improving. And so people are concerned that not only Dempsey coming back, but Bradley, who's much younger, is coming back. So the trend is coming back to MLS and players not challenging themselves. And continuing to, because as a former player of sports, I can vouch for the fact that the only way you actually really continue to get better and better and better is to play against better competition. That's just me.
Well, Bradley didn't just make the switch over because Toronto threw this money out. What happened is Roma was shopping for an extra center midfielder. The Belgium center midfielder, they managed to be able to get him. And in all honesty, once the rumors came out stating that Roma was shopping him, all of a sudden you heard that Michael Bradley had a meeting with management, and then all of a sudden you started hearing rumors about Bradley's potential transfer out of Roma. He's already fourth in the list, according to the coach. Whether you agree to it or not, I don't know.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, and you know what? You know what? Being fourth in Roma's center midfield when they play a 4-3-3 is nothing to sneeze at.
And De Rossi likes to get red cards, so
True.
you're sure to
So, I mean,
at least a few games
Roma,
a year.
If Roma didn't shop for another center midfielder that was going to place Bradley further down the list, there's no reason why I would imagine Bradley would have left Roma. I mean, he was in a good position where he was going to be getting playing time, especially in the following season, especially because he's going to be they're going to most likely they're going to be in the Champions League unless they have some serious falling out, which I don't see happening.
But Brett, nobody's complaining about him leaving Roma. They're complaining about him leaving Europe.
We'll get to that point. Yeah, but I just want to stress that it wasn't that he just left because Toronto threw this large sum out. What happened is Bradley's agent, was going out and he went back. He knew people at Toronto and obviously in MLS and said, hey, are you interested in possibly having Bradley? They threw out a number that Bradley simply couldn't refuse.
That's my point. I wasn't saying that he left because they threw the money at him. He left. He joined TFC simply because they threw all the money at him. He certainly would have had other options in Europe, you would think.
He could have, definitely. Whether or not he would have got the options that he wanted to, another Champions League type team, would he have found playing time for any of them? People were talking about mid-level EPL teams that he would still be, riding pine on, which I don't know if that's necessarily accurate.
I don't know about that either.
There's a lot of teams that could have utilized him throughout Europe, and he could have still been paid well. Yep. But then again, he just got married. He just had a kid. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, he probably has a good 4 or 5 years in Europe. Could have had a good 4 or 5 years in Europe left, and then still could have came back to MLS. However, when you're offered, a 5-year contract at $6.5 million a year,
they overpaid.
And on top of that, that's stability. It's playing stability. He's going to get week in, week out. He's going to get playing time. I mean, $6.5 million a year.
I can't either. I mean, 6.5.
I would have taken that.
They're way overpaid for him.
He was in Europe for 8 years already. He's bounced from what Roma was. His fourth team, not counting his.
No, he went to
stay at Aston Villa or whatever.
Yeah, Heerenveen.
Not counting that.
Heerenveen, then Mönchengladbach, then Aston Villa, and then.
No, I don't count that stay at Aston Villa. It doesn't really count as a team.
Well,
a loan stint that went sour for obvious reasons.
Well, it went sour quickly, but I mean, he didn't play well. The games he actually did get to play, I have to say that.
He didn't get much playing time at all, though, is the thing, though.
I mean, but it takes time to adjust to the EPL.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and he didn't get any time to adjust. So people saying that, well, he can't play in the Premier League. Just give me a break. I mean, the guy deserves more than 3 games to prove his point. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn on this. I mean, I am the kind of person who thinks it's important that American players continue to see the best teams or better teams in Europe as the ultimate goal. At the same time, we all know that I'm a big MLS homer and I want MLS to succeed. And so in that sense, this was a good move for MLS, except for it's in Toronto and you're not going to boost TV ratings, certainly, because we don't ever get to see any Toronto games. And so I'm not sure how much that actually helps. I don't know if it necessarily is going to help the national team. So, again, that's another thing I'm passionate about.
Well, and here's my argument about that. Bradley is a nose-to-the-grinder type player. He's going to bust his ass. He's going to continue to improve. Mind you, he might not be playing the top talent week in, week out, but he's still going to be working his butt off.
Yeah,
and I mean, he's got this World Cup and maybe next cycle through. It's coming to the tail end of his. I mean, he's what is he like 20?
I thought he was 26. Yeah, I mean, that's still fairly young.
It's still fairly young, yes. But in all honesty, MLS is dropping a lot of money on bringing back players. I mean, we had Dempsey coming back, obviously.
Yeah.
We have Bradley now coming back.
Don't forget Michael
Parkhurst to the crew. Yeah, we have a lot of returning U.S. national team players, and it almost seems like MLS is really making a stride coming up here.
Is that it, or is it that Clint Dempsey wasn't getting enough PT at Tottenham? Is it that Michael Bradley wasn't getting the kind of PT you wanted at Roma? Is it that Michael Parkhurst was riding the bench at Augsburg? I mean, come on. I mean, let's be really honest that these guys were not getting the kind of time that they needed or wanted. That's one of the reasons they're coming. It's not like
that's beside the point. I was just simply stating that MLS is putting the money out there to bring U.S. players back.
Well, they're certainly doing
Dempsey
that.
and Bradley both could have found teams anywhere in Europe.
They could have played at lesser teams. I mean, obviously Dempsey is back at Fulham now, so Fulham would have taken him back in, I'm sure, a second.
Clearly.
But obviously, Seattle was willing to put up the money. MLS is willing to put up the money. I like where this is headed. I like that we've got other good players coming that aren't American. We got Defoe's coming. I mean, he's not going to break any world records or anything like that. But it seems that MLS more and more is becoming a very viable option, and people are recognizing it as not the crummy league they used to think it was. And I think that's a positive thing. In the same sense, when I look and think about the national team, you said, oh, well, Bradley will come back to America and continue to bust his ass. I'm sure he will. I don't think he'll be busting his ass against the same quality of players he busted his ass off against in Germany or in Italy or in England. I just think it's just a different level. Now,
I agree.
And here's a guy who could realistically be playing at least 2 more cycles for the United States national team. It was a little disappointing. And Dempsey coming back, Dempsey's a little older, so I took that a little easier. Although
don't get me wrong, when I read that Bradley was coming back to MLS and especially to Toronto, I was like, did April Fools come early this year? What the hell happened here?
Yeah,
I did not see that. That came out of left field completely.
So who do we have overseas anymore that's really in a really good league and playing at a top level? I mean, the guys that could have done it, one of them continues to get injured nonstop at Bolton when Bolton was actually in the upper echelons, and of course now they're in the championship. But what do we got? Brad Guzan playing goalie. We got Tim Howard playing goalie.
Josie at Sunderland.
You do
not a good team, but still playing in the EPL.
Okay, so you got Josie, and then you got all the German Americans that were already playing in Germany anyhow. So I'm not really, I'm not really caring, discussing them. Now you've got Johansson at Aze, So, but it just seems like it's shrinking, and we're going the opposite direction a little. And I don't know. I just don't see right now that next generation of early 20-somethings coming up that we once had right now. I mean, it concerns me a little bit. American players generally, they evolve slower. So maybe that's all right. But there was a time when we had Beasley, Landon Donovan. These are all like really kids just out of their teens. We haven't had a generation like that since then.
We do have some of our former U17s, U20s that are playing, that have been signed abroad, that are going, academy. We have some players that, that have just recently been injured, but they're recovering, that are playing abroad still. We do have youth players that are there. They just need to break into it. And on top of that, you also have to consider there are players that are like the Dempseys. They went to college. They left college, and by the time they went to Europe, they were already 26 at that point.
Yep. That's
so
true.
I mean, I agree. Looking at the U17s and U20s and even the previous U23s for the Olympic qualifiers, you were looking at those squads and you're sitting there like, nobody's standing out. I mean, mind you, there are some players that are standing out.
I mean, they're good.
Don't bite our heads up for saying this. There are some good players.
Yeah, there's some good players. Yeah.
We just need to see them break out later on in the careers. I mean, using Michael Bradley as an example, you had an 18-year-old that went over that, after his first season there, he ended up cracking the first squad. Starting of his second season there. And the players will show up. We'll still have a very talented squad. Heck, even our MLS players are still showing very well when playing, in the qualifiers and stuff like that. Although it's not going to really help us progressing forward. We need to improve the league, but we also need to improve our talent moving abroad as well.
Yeah.
Here I come, but I ain't the same. Mama, I'm coming home. Time's gone by, it seems to be, you could have been.